coming and having church with us, whether it's your first time or your third time or your 127th time. Thank you so much for being here to worship together. We started a series last week called Covenant, and I want to spend the next few minutes talking about something I think is so important, covenant friendships. Having friendships that I think the world would envy because they have a depth to them and a commitment to them. A friendship not based on shortcuts and convenience and sort of what's in it for me, but a friendship that would honor Jesus. C.S. Lewis, the great author, said, "Is any pleasure on earth as great as a circle of Christian friends by a fire?" Come on, especially if that includes s'mores and some coffee, right? Amen? Anybody want to say anything? I mean, Christian friends by a fire. Most friendships, I think, fail because they lack a commitment to those friendships. We don't put that sort of energy and that effort and the level of commitment that those relationships actually need. And this is why this is so important. I think I'm convinced in your life, it's true in my life, but if you were to look at your life and all of its greatest successes and greatest failures, there's almost always a relationship tied to those things. You look at your successes, your highlights, you can point to a relationship. You look at the low moments of your life, a relationship was directly tied to that. Almost every single time. Friendships are very, very important in the Bible. And there's sort of a way the world will present this to you, and there's a way a way to do friendship that God has for us. And I want to look at the book of Proverbs today because it's an amazing book. Talks a lot about friendship, written by a guy named Solomon, who we're told is the wisest person who ever lived. He said a lot about friendship. He said this in Proverbs 18:24. "A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother." Say that word. Say sticks. I actually looked up that word in the Hebrew, and it literally means cleave. Sounds kind of like Genesis chapter 2, that a man would leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. Well, the Bible is using that same word, very strong imagery here. Obviously, it's nothing sexual, but it's talking about this amazing connection of friendship, almost like so unified that we're becoming like one soul. There's a friend who sticks, who cleaves to you and won't leave you, and it's actually closer than family. Closer than family. Look at Proverbs 17:10. "Do not forsake your own friend, nor go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. Better is a friend nearby than a brother far away." Now, here's what's interesting. This might blow your mind, but I think what both of those passages are saying, what Solomon is saying, is that there is a friendship that can be even more valuable than family. It can be. That's remarkable. Especially when you consider like the Hebrew culture, how much family was valued to the Jewish people. Family was everything. And he's saying friendship can actually bring something into your life that family can't always bring. Sometimes things that marriage can't bring, friendship can. Friendship, unlike family, here's the kicker. You ready for this? Comes from mutual choice. Mutual choice. How many of you guys know you don't choose your family and your family doesn't choose you, right? Some of you guys are like, still mad about that. Wish I would have got to say, but I didn't. But you choose your friends and they choose you, and it's mutual, and it has to be mutual. Otherwise, it's awkward, right? How many of you guys have ever had someone choose you as a friend that you didn't choose back? And you're like, give me 50 feet. All right, we're not that close. But friendships in Christ can in some ways be deeper and more meaningful than family because it's something that you're choosing mutually, right? Now, here's what's interesting. When you look at what Jesus talked about with his disciples, specifically before he died, how many of you guys would agree if Jesus is going to use some of his last words to talk about something, it's probably very important. And Jesus talked about friendship. He talked to his disciples and his friends. He actually called them friends. I no longer call you servants, I call you friends. And when he prayed for them in John 17, Jesus said, "Father, let these disciples be one like we're one. Make them like us. Make them friends with each other like we're friends." Think about that. One of the primary goals that Jesus had in his death was to create, you ready for this? A community of friends that in some ways would resemble the Godhead, the Trinity itself. See, the doctrine of the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Spirit, that God existed eternally as one being, three persons, for all eternity, right? Eternally, as a community of friends. And that's one of the things that makes Christianity different than other religions, because other religions will kind of teach that God created us because he was lonely or he was bored, he just wanted a buddy. But the doctrine of the Trinity means no, God has dwelt in perfect friendship for all eternity, and he didn't create you and create me because he was lonely. He created us because he wanted to share his love with us. He wanted to share his friendship with us. So think about this. When we experience friendship, we're experiencing God. When we're experiencing friendship, we are experiencing a dimension of God. And on the flip side, to be isolated without friends is to be very unlike God and how he created us to be. I think the essence of Christian love is absolutely expressed in friendship. Jesus said in John 15:35, by this all men will know that you are my disciples, by your love for one another. In other words, that's one of the distinguishing characteristics that you're mine, that you're my disciple, that you're my people, that you're great friends with each other. And this is not like just sort of a vague, arbitrary thing, but actually the New Testament defines that very clearly. There are 58 commands that have to do with one another, like one anothering one another. 58 commands. Love one another, care for one another, pray for one another, encourage one another, share with one another, and 53 others. 58 total one another's. Jesus died to create a community of friends who would do these things with one another. And that's really what church is about. It's not about getting a big audience together. It's about getting a group of friends together who do these 58 things for and with one another. That's what missions is really all about. Have you thought about that? Talk about giving to missions and being a missionary and sending a missionary. Missions is essentially making friends with people on the outside of the body of Christ, of the family of God. And a lot of times I say mission or missionary, and you think giving money to kids in Africa or taking trips to serve soup to the homeless people community, or, building huts for Guatemalans and then, rushing back to the hotel to Purell your hands. That's a mission trip to some people, but that's not it. Actually, when you think of missions, think Jesus. His mission was to come to earth and make friends with us. And the Bible even says that he was a friend of sinners. Come on, anybody thankful that Jesus was a friend of sinners besides me? That he was your friend and my friend long before we ever deserved it? Still pretty sure we don't. Some of us like to think of ourselves as involved in the mission of God, because that sounds awesome. Heck yeah, I'm down. The mission of God. But we don't have any non-believing friends. And guys, that is the mission of God. To make friends with people who are far from God, whether those people live in Africa or across the hall. So friendship is very important. It's actually the heart of the gospel. But before I move on to this next point, I think we should note that friendship is not really valued at all in our society, in our culture, at least not compared to things like romance and sex. I mean, just do a computer search on friendship and compare it to what you get back on sex. On second thought, you're probably not a good idea to do a computer search on sex. Let's skip that idea. But think about how much more movies and music and stuff talks about sex and romance more so than friendship. Or celebrity news. No one cares about who's friends with who in Hollywood. Right? It's all about who's sleeping with who in Hollywood, right? What? Ben Affleck and George Clooney are friends? Maybe we should change their name to Bjorge. Let's put that name, nobody does that, right? But here's why, It's actually like sociologists have concluded that like for the last 30 years, there has been this thing that is called, that's kind of shaped everything, the commodification of relationships. A commodity is something that you buy and sell. And when you do, you enter a relationship with a person that's like a vendor, like a vendor-consumer relationship, right? That makes sense. Now, that means that the relationship is not based on your enjoyment of the person or your commitment to the person, but it's based on what you're getting out of the relationship. So let's say that you have a local grocery store that you like to go to, right? And you really like going there, and you like the people, and they like you, and it's great. You might even know some of their names, but all of a sudden the quality of the food goes downhill, and their prices skyrocket, and one day you walk in and you see rats running around all over the floor. Now, what are you going to do? You're going to stop going to that store, right? But what about Thelma? She works there and she's so nice. It doesn't even matter. Thelma doesn't matter. You're not going to that store anymore because the quality of the food went down, the prices went up, and there are rats running around everywhere. You quit going. Because the relationship is just a means to an end of getting something. And if you're not getting something, then you're walking away. Sociologists have noted that Americans, we've kind of slipped that concept of commodity into every relationship we have without even really thinking about it. So I enter into a relationship because of something I need to get from you, and if I don't get it, I walk away. Whether that's a marriage or a church or a friendship. People are just a means to an end. And the more that happens, the less we talk about things like friendship. And I think we start to lose out on something really, really important that God has for us. We don't talk about it. In fact, some of you, when you heard that there was going to be an entire sermon on friendship, you were like, oh man, really? I already got enough friends, bro. What are we going to have, like a meet and greet time? Yes, we are. We're going to break for about 10 minutes, and I want you to meet 27 people you don't know. No, we're not going to do that yet. Here, now we're going to do that here. But why would friendship require its own sermon? Some of you thought that. And we're missing out. Because real friends are not really a means to anything. Listen to me. They are the end. They are the point. And you knowing them and you enjoying them just for themselves. About 50 years ago, C.S. Lewis said this in the Four Loves, a book that he wrote. He said, because we don't really value friendship, it's kind of the first thing that goes. It's the first relationship that gets squeezed out of our lives. We continue family relationships, man, because hello, it's blood. Blood's thicker than water. Work relationships, still got to go to work. Got bills to pay. I'm going to have to keep interacting with them. But not friendships, especially men. After a guy gets over 30, the age of 30, no friends. Like few guys have genuine friends. I got friends. Who? Well, Bill at work. What's Bill's last name? I don't know, but he always gets the guiso bean and cheese burrito every day at lunch, so I know that about him. Bro, all right, so you don't know Bill's last name. What are 3 things you know about Bill? Guiso bean and cheese. There's 3 things right there. Like, I mean, see, I know Bill. He knows me. Right. But friendship is the first thing to go. C.S. Lewis goes on to say, friendship is unnecessary. That's how people feel. It's unnecessary. Like philosophy, like art, it has no survival value. You don't need friendship to live, but then he goes on to say, but it's one of those things that gives value to survival. What makes friendship so important? I want to give you just a few thoughts. The first one is that friends form us. I've heard it said this way, you show me your friends, I'll show you your future. Proverbs 13:20, he who walks with the wise will be wise, but the friend of fools will be a fool. No, it's actually worse than that. The friend of fools will what? Will be destroyed. And by the way, that's not God destroying you. That's you destroying yourself by the choices you've made about who to spend most of your time with. Let me ask you this. Why do our friends have such incredible power over who we become? It's something sociologists call the power of the need for acceptance in our lives. We have this internal need to be accepted, and it is so strong that it makes us, sometimes unconsciously, conform to the people around us. I never forget watching one of those hidden camera prank shows where they had a camera set up in an elevator, and they watched this guy walk in the elevator, and then every time they would go up to another floor, the door would open and a person would walk in and they would immediately face the back of the elevator. The first time the guy's like, that's weird. Goes up to another floor, door opens, guy walks in, faces the back of the elevator. He's like, what? What's okay? And 5 floors later, the 5th person walks in, faces the back of the elevator. Guess what the original guy eventually does? He faced the back of the elevator, right? So pranks on him. Another one, there was an unsuspecting guy who walked into a doctor's office, and one by one, people got up and walked over to a calendar and ripped a page off the calendar, went and sat back down. Well, that happened several times in a row, and eventually the guy gets up, walks over to the calendar, rips a page off, and goes and sits down, just kind of blending in. There was another one where everybody just kind of sat quietly in a waiting room for a while, and eventually everyone stood up and undressed down to their underoos. And the one unsuspecting guy, guess what he did? He stripped down to his tighty whities, right? He's like, hey, everyone's doing it. I'm doing it too. Years ago, scientists actually were trying to decide why fish swam in schools. And so they figured out there was a part of the brain that they thought made fish do this. So they got one fish and did a partial lobotomy on it, took the part of the brain out of the fish that they thought would cause it to swim in schools, put it back in the water, fish could still swim, but like they thought, he didn't swim in school, he swam off by himself. But guess what all the other fish did? They followed the brainless fish. And that explains a lot, doesn't it? That explains a lot. It's the power of the need for acceptance over us. And you could do 2 things with that. Because I know some of you guys are like, dude, I'm a leader. Nobody's influencing me. I influence people. And my friends can do whatever they want to, but they can't decide for me who I am and who I'm going to be. I make my own decisions. I do me. That's how some of you think. And maybe that's true. It's not. But maybe it is true. And you could just be this strong, like authoritative leader, and everybody will fall in line. You're the one brainless fish that everyone else is going to follow. Or you could just be wise and decide to walk with the wise so you can be wiser, right? You can make a decision on the front end. I'm going to decide very wisely who I'm going to surround myself with because I'm eventually going to look like them. I'm going to talk like them. I'm going to act like them. Probably going to dress like them. I'm probably going to be just like them because you show me your friends, I'll show you your future. The one who walks with the wise will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed. So one of 2 things. You could be Superman and everybody can fall in line, or you could be wise about the people who have the greatest influence in your life. And you say, Landon, what are you trying to say? I should only be friends with Christians? Am I not supposed to be friends with people who don't know Jesus? Of course you are. But you have to understand that there are circles of influence. And I might be friends with somebody who doesn't know Jesus, and I absolutely am. But there is an inner circle in my life of brothers who know everything about me. And that inner circle will always be chosen specifically and on purpose because I want to be like them, because they want to be like Jesus. And I'm not beyond being influenced, and none of us are. And parents, you need to think about that. If Proverbs 13:20 is true, and those who walk with the wise are wise, and those who are a companion of fools will be fools, the most formative thing about your kids is the community they're around. It absolutely is. And I've known so many parents that just let their kids be involved with anyone, anywhere, at any time. And then they grow up one day, and they're involved in 15 sports, and they spend most of their time at a public school, and they don't have much of a relationship with their parents, and then one day they decide they don't want to follow God, and we go, but I didn't raise them that way. And the truth is, you did. You did. Because we allowed the most formative influence in their lives, their companions, to be fools. And I didn't say that. The Bible said that. Who we spend the most time with is who we will look like. Friends form us. Friends save us from self-destruction. Proverbs 27:6, faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. You know what a friend can do? A friend can usually tell when you're about to do something stupid, right? And you can't see it, but they can see it. Because we all have blind spots. All of us need someone who can look at us in the face and be like, bro, you're blowing it. Girl, you are messing this up royally. You need that. Have you ever heard of the path principle? The path principle is that where you end up in life is determined by the path that you were on, which is determined by the decisions you make, not your intentions. So if I left here today and I was like, I'm going to go to Dallas, and I drove all the way, up through Coleman and 206 over to I-20, and I got to I-20 and I went I-20 west. How many of you guys know I'm not getting to Dallas ever? And it doesn't matter how good my intentions are. Well, I really wanted to go to Six Flags. No, it doesn't matter what your intentions are. I made a decision to get on the wrong path. Now, the great thing about friendships is friends can usually see when you're on the wrong path before you do. And everyone has blind spots. And some of you guys are like, I don't have blind spots. Well, how do you know you don't? Well, I don't see them. That's the point, dum-dum. That's why they're blind spots. We all have them, okay? And that's why God gives us friends who can plainly see what we're blind to. Look at Hebrews chapter 3, verse 13. But exhort one another every day, that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. You know what that word hardened means? Like in the original, in the Greek language, it's the word sclero, which is where we get words like sclerosis, the hardening of arteries and that sort of stuff. How many of you guys know that doesn't happen all at once? You go to Outback and eat a blooming onion today. I'm planting seeds. How many of you guys know God's in that, right? You get a group of friends around a blooming onion, that's a good day. But if you eat a blooming onion every day of your life for the next 60 years, how many of you guys know? Those arteries are clogging up. I don't care how much faith you have, right? It's the hardening of arteries. And it happens over time. Doesn't it happen over a period of years? But we're continually hardening. And our spiritual heart is the same way. And you and I are hardening at times, but friends, God says, friends can break that up. Friends can exhort you and break that up. And for many of you, your lives are going bad because you're not close enough to anyone to speak into your life. And the reality is, your blind spots are killing you. In fact, you might just be surrounded by people who are going, girl, follow your heart. God wants you to be happy. Do what makes you feel good. That's why we need real friends. David Powelson, a Christian counselor, said, things in a secret garden almost always grow mutant. Things in a secret garden. This is why pastors fall into immorality. This is why pastors that I've known have committed adultery. Because they all had something in common. You want to know what it was? They got so removed from people. Isn't that odd that your job is to serve people, but you get so removed from people and friendships that your life falls apart and nobody can say anything to you? It wasn't because they stopped having a quiet time and memorizing verses. And listen, that's not just true for pastors, that's true for church people. I don't care how long you've been around. I don't care how long you've been in church or how much you know or look, how many Bible verses you can quote. No one is so far advanced that they don't need the body of Christ. No one. Friends form us. Friends save us sometimes. And friends take care of us when life falls apart. That's what real friends do. Ecclesiastes chapter 4 says, 2 are better than one, for they fall. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up. Again, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. Some of you guys didn't know that the Bible promoted spooning, but there it is. That's a verse for it right there. When life gets cold, you need someone to spoon with. That's what it just said, okay? And seriously, but C.S. Lewis said, hey, when you go through pain, that's what you need. You don't just need like theological reasoning when you're going through pain. What you need is, he actually said, the slightest human sympathy, the slightest touch of human sympathy. That's what you need. You know, studies show that women without a close friend are 10 times more likely to be depressed. But a man who has many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks. Can I tell you something? When that day happens for you, and by the way, it's not an if, it's when, that day comes for you, you need a real friend. You don't need a bunch of Facebook friends or fans or followers. You need one friend who really loves you. I looked for the sake of this illustration on Facebook. I got something like, a couple thousand friends. But how many of you guys know if I have a birthday party, there won't be 2,000 people there with a hat and a blower, right? Like that's not going to happen. Most of those people are not close to me, and they don't really know me. And also they can't see the sinful, hardening patterns develop. That's why I need deep, real relationships. People who are close enough to me to look into my life and speak into it, to see when sinful patterns develop, and to spoon with me in the cold, metaphorically speaking. And we provide a vehicle for that in our church. Not spooning, but for relationships to develop. And we call them life groups. Because I would love for you to say about this church, when people ask you why you go there, I would love for your first answer to be, because my people are there. That's where my people are. That's where my family is. You know what's great is the worship can be all right, and the sermon can be mediocre, and the line to check out your kid can be long, but if your people are there, you'll keep showing up, right? So we want to do life together in this church. We want to share our joys. We want to shoulder each other's pain. Life is better together. The cool thing is if you get a part of a life group or join a serve team and just really get involved, that's when family happens. It stops just kind of being a service you come to that begins to be like a family reunion every Sunday. What's cool about that is you might make friends with someone you never would have made friends with. You never would have naturally crossed paths with them. They're from a different walk of life, different background, different age or stage. And it's a powerful thing. And I think it's God's heart for us. I want to end this way. I want to give you 6 things real quick. 6 characteristics of a good friend, maybe what to look for in a friend, or how to be one. The first one is genuineness. Proverbs 19:4, it says, wealth brings many new friends. Man, when you have something it means, a lot of people want to act like they're your friend, but of course, what the Bible's saying is they're not really your friend. They want what you have. And there are people who are using you for something they really want that they think you're the gateway to, whether that's power, whether that's influence, whether that's popularity, could be money, could be a platform. It's amazing how many people stop being your friend when they don't work for you anymore. Wealth brings many new friends. Proverbs 19:4, it goes on to say, but a poor man is deserted by his friend. So wealth may bring many new friends, but poverty shows you who your friends really are. Because there are people that you thought were friends, but the real friends don't desert you in a tough season, in a tough time. And some of you have been there. Some of you guys have gone through a really tough time, and you figured out who the real ones were, who the real friends were, because they stayed committed to you when you had nothing to offer them. A friend walks in when everyone else walks out. And you got to be smart enough to recognize when someone's using you, and when you find someone who really does love you, because that's a priceless gift of a person, you got to hang on to them, right? So genuineness. You got to hang on to the real ones, the genuine ones. And then the next thing is constancy. Proverbs 17:17, a friend loves at all times. Can we agree that for a friend to love at all times, that means that they love you when you are unlovable? Because none of us are lovable at all times, right? But a friend is constant. The next thing, dependable. Dependable. Proverbs 25:19, trusting in a treacherous man in time of trouble is like a bad tooth or a foot that slips. There is nothing worse than tooth pain. Anybody want to say amen to that? Also, I'd rather have a rotten tooth than a friend like that, right? Or when a foot slips, there's nothing worse than just thinking that you're on solid ground. You're not even thinking about, are my feet going to work? And all of a sudden your foot slips and you pull a groin muscle or sprain an ankle, and you're thinking, man, the thing that I depended on, that I even took for granted, suddenly wasn't there for me. And that's what it's like to have an undependable friend. You tell them something, and you take it for granted that they won't repeat it, But lo and behold, 2 weeks later, everybody knows about it. That's one reason I never like to trust people who say, now, I promised I wouldn't say anything to anybody, but I'll go ahead and tell you. And then I go, okay. Hey, I promised I wouldn't tell anybody, but I'm just going to tell you, don't tell anybody. And then they go, hey, I promised, right? And it goes on and on and on. So that's when I hear someone say that, I'm like, I'm not telling you anything. Because it's only a matter of time till you're spreading my stuff around. But real friends are dependable when you have a need. And here's the key, whether it's convenient or not. Whether it's convenient or not. I have a lot of people who like to be my friends on their terms. But when I need them, like when I really need them, that's not who I call. I call it the moving test. You know what I'm talking about? You got a lot of friends on social media, but you post that you're moving on Saturday and see who shows up, right? Those are your real friends. Because all you offered them was a Little Caesars pizza, and that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough of a reason to show up. But they showed up for you, okay? And then the next one is honesty. Honesty, this is huge. Proverbs 24:26 says an honest answer, you ready for this? Is the sign of a true friendship. Friends that tell each other truths, even when they're painful, that's a real friendship. Someone who won't do that's not really a friend. If your friends have never told you something that ticked you off, they're not your friend. Because, again, you are not virgin born, so that means you have flaws and you got blind spots, but a real friend cares enough to speak the truth into you, even if it makes you mad for a minute. If you see something in someone else's life and it's killing them and you think, oh, I care too much about them to hurt their feelings, what you're really saying is I care too much about myself to put myself through the pain of telling them that. A lot of times I hear someone say, yeah, I know they're my friend and I know they're making a big mess of their life, but it's none of my business. No, friends make it their business. An honest answer is a true sign of friendship. Here's the next thing, empathy. Empathy, it means you feel with someone. You enter into their feelings. A real friend feels with you. You gotta have some intentionality and some wisdom there. Solomon has a great way of talking about this. Proverbs 27:14. He who blesses his neighbor with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, will be counted a curse to him. How many of you guys want to print that verse out and put it by your bed, right? That translation, don't talk to me until I've had coffee, right? Back up. And you better not give me any bad news before I've had coffee, right? Timing is everything. And when you're entering into someone's emotions and you're feeling what they feel, timing is everything. Especially if they're going to tell you something that will hurt you, they're going to hurt too. And sometimes when your friend is hurting, it's less what they maybe don't need as much as you think they need is advice. They might just need someone to hurt with them. I've had to learn this in my marriage with sweet Sarah. When she tells me about her bad day or something that went wrong, how many of you guys know she's not asking me for solutions or answers? Mostly she wants me to relive the agony with her. Okay? She wants me to experience the frustration with her. Oh gosh, it's terrible. I bet that hurt, right? I bet that was tough. And guys, the 4 most powerful words you'll ever learn in a relationship. And then what happened? Should learn that, fellas. And then what happened? Oh my gosh, babe. And then what happened? Empathy, right? When your friend hurts, you hurt. When your friend rejoices, you rejoice. Someone that can be happy when you're sad is no real friend. And the last thing is boundaries. Boundaries. This is interesting. Proverbs 25:17. Let your foot be seldom in your neighbor's house, lest he have his fill of you and hate you. This is the friend who never knows when to go home. Don't point at anybody. But it's that clinginess. hey, we should wear matching t-shirts and have a tandem bike that we ride together and do everything together. And if you do anything with anyone else, I'm mad at you, right? It's like a golden retriever wagging their tail with a stick in their mouth, just always ready to play. And you're like, can you go play with somebody else for a couple weeks? But we know those people that they'll send an email and then a text, and they'll call 30 seconds later to see if you got the email and the text. And that's an overwhelming feeling when you have that friend. Because their life, honestly, I'm going to tell you what it is. They have worship issues. Deep worship issues. Their life is so out of whack, they're expecting you to be their surrogate God. And you got to tell them, I can't be all places at all times and meet all the deep needs of your soul because I'm not God. You don't have a me-shaped vacuum in your life. You have a God-shaped vacuum. Boundaries. So 6 ways to be a good friend. Maybe I've discouraged you because you're thinking, well, I'm not as good of a friend as I thought I was, or man, that's just harder than I thought to find a good friend. But it's possible, and here's why. In John 15, you know what Jesus said to his friends? He says, as I have loved you, love one another. See, this is something we learn from the truest friend we'll ever have. The real ability to be a friend comes from experiencing Jesus' friendship to you. Think about this. Jesus did all these things that I just mentioned. Jesus' love was genuine. And he gave up his very life for us. His love was constant. He loved us when we were at our most unlovely. His love is dependable. He didn't leave us at our lowest. He won't leave us now. His love is honest. He told me what I needed to hear, even when it made me want to be mad enough to crucify him. His love was empathetic. He not only entered into my pain and wept when I wept, but he actually took our pain on himself. What a friend we have in Jesus. When you experience that friendship, you'll become a good friend. And you won't have to use people anymore because the thirst of your soul for eternal love will finally be quenched. Because you're loved by the God of the universe. Listen, when you're accepted and approved by the one whose opinion really matters anyway, you'll be a great friend. You'll have learned how to love a friend. When people let you down, it won't devastate you as much. You'll see that God has accepted you as you were, screwed up as you were, and you'll be empowered now to love others that way. See, here's real love. Real love is to be truly known and truly loved anyway. Think about it. To be known and not loved, that's rejection. To be loved and not truly known, that's just surface sentimentality. But Jesus did both. He knew us completely. He loved us thoroughly. Jesus is that covenant friend. You ever thought about how they would make a covenant in ancient days? Two people, they would take the animals and they would cut them in two and place them on the ground close enough to each other that the blood would flow into one stream. And then the people would pass through the animals as a sign to say, may it be done to me like we did to these animals if I ever break my promise to you. If I ever break my covenant to you. Which is really powerful because isn't that what God did to Abraham? Abraham said, God said, I make a covenant, but the animals and the Spirit of God passed through. Jesus, to end an old covenant, had his own life ripped apart so that we could have the new covenant of love and friendship and be friends with God. He is ultimately the friend who sticks closer than anyone. Anybody thankful for Jesus? Can we stand all across this place? Lord, we love you so much. God, I just thank you for your presence here. God, for every person, thank you that first and foremost, you have extended your friendship to us. And I pray, Lord, that we would
do everything in our power, on our side, to enter into that friendship, to receive it, and then to represent you to everyone around us. God, would you make us that type of covenant friend, that we would love people the way you love people. The people around us, God, that we would try to meet their needs, not give them what they deserve, but what they need. That we would look around us and find a need and meet it. That we would be compelled by love to see people the way you see people, to love others truly, to love as we have been loved. If there's anyone here that is just brokenhearted because of a friendship, a relationship that's gone south, Lord, I thank you that you can heal that. I thank you that you can restore and renew. And God, you can put us back into the game to love again. I pray for every person here that's thinking, man, that sounds good. I just don't know if I have it in me. I pray you would enlarge our hearts to love more, to love better, to love deeper. We don't really know how much time we have left on this earth. I pray we make it count. I pray we make it count with people. The ones you love so much that you gave your life for. Help us be a good friend. Help us be a good friend to you, Lord, like you've been to us. We thank you and we praise you. In Jesus' name.